How are you doing? Welcome to live stream number 147. Getting up there. Today is April 20th. It's Friday. Glad we made it. If you made it to this point, that's a good thing. Today we're gonna do part 3 of the What's New, and well, since this is Friday, we're gonna do the cam portion. But before we get into that, I have to apologize. I made a huge mistake yesterday. I thought that the generative design was available to every Ultimate customer. I was wrong. I'm sorry. It is only available to Ultimate paying customers for now. That's what I was told. So it might be for everybody, but so what happens is that if you're a startup or you're a hobbyist, you have the Ultimate version, and I thought that meant you would get the generative design button. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. It's only for right now for Ultimate paying customers. What I'm talking about is, because it's maybe kind of like hard to really know what the heck I'm trying to say here, is if we go into to Fusion here, open a new design. There is this generative design button, and this was what I talked about yesterday. But like I said, for right now, you have to have the paid version of Ultimate. I'm sorry, Bob and a few other people who emailed me. Truly sorry about that. All right, so I owe you a beer, or maybe a bottle of scotch or something, depending on how much trouble you went through. Okay, again, I'm sorry. I should have done my homework a little bit better. And that replies to another thing. I got a question yesterday about talking about cloud credits, because this new generative design uses cloud credits that can also be used for other simulation stuff and can used for rendering. And now, because I made that mistake yesterday, let me do my homework and get back to you on that. Okay, so enough of that. Let's dive into some more What's New stuff here. So what I talked about a few days ago was that I wanted to try in this time around with What's New to actually go a little bit more in depth. So Bryce and Aaron and Marty does a great job on the Fusion 360 main page, but they're kind of like limited to how much time their video can be, and I thought that now when we're doing these daily live streams, why don't we dig a little bit deeper into it here. As always, love your comments, feedback, and all that stuff. So the first thing on the cam aspect, so today is all about cam. If you're not into cam, take an early Friday, take an early weekend. The first thing is new in probing, and I brought up my tombstone here for some 4-axis machining. Did a live stream on this not too long ago. New in probing is that now they have added, the development team, they have done a lot in this release, I think. They have added the function to put tool orientation on. And that's what we use when we are doing something like this 4th axis. The way I programmed this one, if you're not familiar with this, you didn't see the live stream, is I have a setup. You should always have a setup, but notice that my setup is sitting down here right at the center of rotation, and on a horizontal, this is kind of like for a horizontal machine. On a horizontal machine, your Y is up, and then your X and your Z are kind of like pointing in the Z points to your 0 side direction on a horizontal machine. This is actually the way that I used to program my horizontal machining centers. Well, not mine, but when I worked at a manufacturing facility in Rochester. And it just makes it a lot easier that you have your G54 sitting right in the center of rotation. Of course, it comes with the caveat that then everything on the tombstones have to be right in place. But that's one of the great things about having something like Fusion, where you of course can model everything up. So the way it works is that you have one G54 sitting center rotation, But then with this new tool orientation, we've had this for milling and drilling, so that's not new. That's actually how, like if you go in and look here, I programmed one part in here, so you'll see there's a facing operation. If you right click on that facing operation, you go to the geometry tab, you will see the tool orientation is turned on in here. So that's the same function. Same thing if I go to an adaptive to rough it out, edit, go to geometry tab, tool orientation. That's how you kind of like control where on the tombstone the different sides you're going to be machining on. So we can now do that for probing. So go into probing, select a probe, and I'm just going to go down here and select the one out of the library here, out of the metric library. Select that one, go to your geometry tab, turn on tool orientation, and that will give you the triad down here, right, for your work coordinate system. And then you can just go up and use it just like you would do, select this face, and now you will see that the z-axis had flipped to this as its 0 side, or whatever side you want to call it. And now I can go in and select the faces that I want to probe, hit OK. Probing normally comes first. You can just drag, in case you didn't know that, you can actually drag operations in here also inside a cam. So if I go in to simulate this now, hit the simulate button. I don't know if that's going to come here, slow it down a little bit. You can see now the probing cycle will come in here and probe the part and set the G54. We have done live streams on the whole setting G54 with the probing before, so I'm not going to go that deep into that. But that's how you would use that function. I can't, like, so either on a fourth, on a fifth axis machine, you can now use that probe to go in and do that. Cool. The next thing, let's get over to this model here we've been using for a couple of these What's News. The next thing I want to show you is adaptive clearing. They added what is called both ways for this. And before I go too deep into it, I just want to make sure that I say that if you go down in the description area of this video, you will find a link to a YouTube video that the CAM development team actually did on this. So you definitely want to make sure you check that out. It's like 3 minutes long. Al Watmoth and his team did an incredible job, as they always do, high quality, at the Pier 9, where we have, well, actually you see the 3 CNC mills we have there. You see the Datron, the Haas VF2, and the Matsuura 5-axis. I think you see them all in those 3 minutes. But Al kind of takes you through some of this, so definitely make sure you check that out. I'll take you through it too, just my 2 cents on it. But to show it, I'm actually going to do something else. I'm going to be in the model environment. I just thought I would show you this. How do you chop a part in half? Well, if you go into modify, you go into split body, and you select the body, and then you go down to selection tool. You can actually select the plane, do that, and then you can hide the body. I want the other body. That body. And you just chop the part in half. How about that? So let's talk about CAM. Go into the CAM. Let's do a setup. We'll flip it the other way. Doesn't really matter. So in the adaptive, see, I wanted to show this open. So if we go in, and this works both for 2D adaptive and 3D adaptive. If you go into adaptive clearing, and I'm just going to go in and select the standard. Wow, metric. Something got moved up and down on all my tools. Isn't that normal in, where is it? 16 millimeters. Somebody yells it out right now. There you go. 16 millimeter flat, the big rougher in here with the extremely long fluid length. Doesn't matter. Couple of things. When you pick adaptive, make it a habit of selecting the edge and not the face. And the reason for that is if you're selecting the face, then that's what it tries to machine. If I go ahead and hit OK here, it will do adaptive on that face. And you will actually see that it does a couple of weird swirls here because we have some holes in it. So make sure when you do adaptive that you always, unless you're doing a facing with it, select an edge. Then you will see that you get what you want, really, in there. And then it also knows that it's got to start from the outside. Before I get into the back and forth here, so one thing you will see here, if I go ahead and simulate this right now, the cutter will come down, it will climb mill, lift up, come over, and it will climb mill again. Now, we talked about adaptive multiple times in the live streams. It is absolutely the best way to remove material inside of Fusion. What the software does in the background is that it calculates, it knows what the stock is, it knows the boundaries you're going to machine, and it will keep a constant cutting width on that cutter under every circumstance. So it not only can you remove a lot of material, but it will also save your cutter life. Now, the reason I just quickly want to show this is so climb milling in CNC milling is kind of like just the golden rule, versus if you ever do like Bridgeport, like standard milling where you are cranking the handle, we normally go conventional, and this is how the cutter is spinning around. Now, one of the comments that I get from people is that it's all great, you know, climb milling is the way, but look how the cutter lifts up every time. That's a lot of rapid moves to move up. And I will tell you that I did a lot of production machining back in the day, and yes, rapid moves cost a lot of money. I know that if you're just machining a couple of parts, then a little bit of rapid move doesn't really matter. But if you're doing production, then rapid moves are critical. So this is where this whole thing comes in. But before we get to the going back and forth, I want to show you how you eliminate those high lifts, because that's many times people ask me that. Right click on and go into the operation. Go into your linking tab. That's the last tab. That has everything to do with what the cutter is going to do between it's engaged in material, and that will be rapiding to the next cut. And what I normally do in here is there's really three things I change. Set the maximum stay down to a higher value, and this I think can be a little confusing, but you know, Mike Matera put some good help menus here. If you hover over it, comes up on the screen. So the bigger you make this distance, you're telling the software that it can stay down the bigger you make it. So if you make like this 250 millimeters instead of 80 millimeters, then if I hit OK, you will now see that we don't get any of those rapid moves. Now, another thing I normally change in here is I normally add a little bit of lift height, because you normally want the cutter to go up just a little bit, right? You don't want it to drag around the floor. But that is the setting to go ahead, and now when I simulate this, you will now see that it's still climb milling, but it will lift up 2 millimeters, then it will go down again and lift up 2 millimeters. You can kind of see if I zoom in, maybe that area there is where the cutter is going to lift up to that 2 millimeters. So here it comes. And it's going to lift up 2 millimeters and go back there again. So I just want to make sure, you know, I hope this adds a little bit of value to somebody out there. Okay, so now what they have added, this was not new. What is added is they have added an option where in the passes tab, you can now say you want to go both ways. But notice, so this whole adaptive clearing, it's controlled by this optimal load. So this is how thick of a chip, side milling chip, your machine can take. And this depends on what type of machine you have. So you know, it's not like one golden rule. So just be kind of aware of that. But like what I want to show you is if I check this both ways, I get another one. So I get an optimal load here, and you get an optimal load the other way. Because what the software is going to do now is it actually is going to climb and conventional milling. So it's going to climb, that's all great. Conventional milling. Climb, conventional milling, okay? So now you're getting, you know, that force. But if you're machining like steel, you definitely can test it out. It depends on how hard your material is, but I would definitely think that your conventional milling has to be quite a bit lower. So you cannot take the same amount conventional as you can climbing, and you can hear it for sure as you're going back and forth. I personally, I would probably start out with like something like half of that, and then kind of like play around with it. But I would think if you got to remove a lot of material, like in 61 aluminum, this function here will definitely save you some time. And I would also think that you probably will find, especially if you're doing like something like 6061, I would think that you will find the cutter is going to last up pretty good. Definitely if you're doing roughing. This here, you know, this is just one of these add-ons from the development team that, you know, this is productivity, right? And something that I think is absolutely awesome. So this was a good one that they worked on for this. Another thing that I'm a huge fan of is a couple of things they did to the tool library. So I'm going to the tool library now. The tool library have gotten quite a few updates. Let's see if there's one. This one has a little bit more tools. They have done a good job, kind of like trying to clean up and do different things in here, adding a little bit of logic to it. This time around, what they have done is, if you look here, we have a bunch of tools, and you can drag over here, and there's a lot of different things in here. What you can do now is, if you right-click in here, you can now turn on and off things that maybe makes or doesn't make sense to you. So now you can start saying, all right, I don't really care about the surface speed. I can turn that off, that column off. So you're turning off the overall, all these different ones. When I used to work at Ridlam, I used to use comments a lot in my tools. So I would have comments was really what I used for myself to make sure I got the right tool. So now you can turn that on, and then what you can actually also do is you can drag them and reorder them. So I would definitely have comments being like the name, and then I would have my personal comment in here on what it is. So right click in here and you can turn on and off things, and then you can also reset it to default. That might be a good thing. And then you can grab here, and you can grab things and you can reorder depending on kind of like what you want. So that was definitely another, I think, very, very good thing. All right. Another one they did. Let me just let me delete this setup for a second, or at least this. Let's just delete this. Let's get back to the model environment, and let me undo what I did with splitting this one apart here. Okay. The other thing that they worked on was holes and hole drilling, and it's actually kind of funny because I just had a guy who gave me a note that I always seems like whenever I'm doing something in CAM and I get to drilling, I always rush over it, and you know, I should stop doing that. And he's right. And the funny thing is, though, I used to do a lot of hole drilling, and it used to be one of those things that I always played around with. So let me just do a new setup here, and let's talk about the drilling. And I think my tendency is just because I'm kind of like, holes are boring, but if you're drilling a lot of them, they are not. They did some really good enhancements in here. So let's go ahead and do a drilling. I'm just going to select a tool. Countersink will be fine. Select that. So this interface in here got some really nice stuff. First off, let's go in and select a hole. So select the face here, and we can do select same diameter, right? go in and click on that, and it will find all the different those different diameters, right? And you can select other faces, and they will be added in there. Now here's something pretty neat. Look down here in the lower right corner. Well, you can't look at that because I put a logo there. Hang on. My logo is right in the way. Oh, that is a rookie mistake. I thought it was going to be all fancy with a logo down in the corner, then you can't see. Down here, you can see here that we have 10 holes selected. If I select another one, now it changes to 14. So this is pretty neat that they have added a little hole count down here. That I think is... I have definitely tried where you had a drawing that said drill 32 holes, and then you were sitting in here and selecting, and you had to go in and count that you actually had 32 and make sure you didn't miss one. So good job there to the development team. Another one I really like is diameter range. So this, and again, when I hover over here, you get the flyout menu that Mike Matera does such a good job with. I always read these. So it's diameter range. This is brilliant. Now you can just type, if you know the holes you got to pick, and we're spotting right now, right? We can select more and more holes, and if you were just spot drilling every hole here, you would have to go around and click all of them. Now you can just go in to the diameter range in here, and you can do that. I think that is absolutely awesome. The other thing that they have added in here is selected by points. Now this is not new, that you can select by points, but what I did here was, if some people have to model a lot of holes, like you get a plate that has like, I don't know, a couple of hundred holes in it, or 500 holes or something like that. You know that all these holes kind of like can tear down on your CPU power on your computer. So what you can do is that you can create sketches, right? So here is a bunch of sketch diameters. Now I could extrude all these down to the right depth, and there's not that many right here, but if you have a lot of holes, that can slow down your computer. So what the CAM team did was they let you now use, let's go back into that drill. They let you now use the select points. And if I select one of these diameters, I can still use select same diameter. So now the algorithm is done in here. It's absolutely brilliant that that by selecting a point, it even knows the sketch diameter, and you can now select all those. So there's some people who's going to be really happy about that. Now another thing that they have added in is that you can now use a boundary, and this, let me go back to our model here. This is, I use the sketch. It doesn't have to be a sketch. I just created a rectangle, right? A sketch rectangle, but it could be a pocket or something like that. But what is really great about this, especially if you have big plates where you can't reach all the holes. We've all tried this, where you know, we can only reach half of the part. You could cut it in half like I did in the beginning, but of course the CAM team, those developers, added a contain boundary right here. So I can click on that, I can select my edge, and now you will see it only selected the holes within that. That is really awesome. Another thing that I believe was in the last release that I talked about, but now I'm in here. Also remember that you can now sort the holes by depth. So you actually can now select different depth and control all that. There's also now a reverse order in here. You can check that, and you're now reversing the order that you are going in. That can be extremely nice. If we right now are saying we are spot drilling all these holes, and now we actually want to go ahead and drill them, then you know the fact that we can go and say right click, and we could say that we wanted to do a create derived drilling operation. Select, you know, a drill instead of the spot drill, right? So I think I don't know what size these holes are. And then you could go into here. Now you could reverse the order if you had that option. It kind of like depends on how. I mean, that could be great depending on how your machine handles tool changes. Some machines, the head's got to move up to get to the tool change, but other machines you actually don't have to do that. So this little reverse order here is absolutely awesome. So the drilling function here got some pretty cool features with this whole diameter range. You can select these points, the selected diameter in there. Yeah, so really good job on that, I think, to those guys. The last thing we're going to talk about is turning. Well, the second last thing. Turning here, they added a couple of things to the turning here. One thing that they added, what I thought was kind of interesting, is if you have a profile cut. So I'll just go in here and simulate this profile cut here. A standard profile and cuts. Now you can actually right click and you can turn on use packing. So if you click packing here, you can now control the packing depth and retract. And I think this is funny. I thought it was funny because I've never seen that before. Now I'm not the lathe wizard either. I've never seen packing on a CNC mill before, or CNC turning before, but running manual mills, I have definitely, you know, done that by hand. So you don't get those long stringy chips. You're just standing there on the handle and you just kind of like, you know, pack as you're going. So that was a good, very good enhancement. The other thing that was added in here, we're talking about the turning, is I think it's Sandvik who have created some new turning inserts that will actually let you machine both directions, so not just coming in from the front to the back. So what they did was they added that. So if we go in here and say turning, and still we select the turning profile. Now I need to read up a little bit on this, but if we go into the turning sample and select something. Wait a minute. Something like this fella here, where you can kind of like go both ways. So then be aware of that you can do from back to front here. So you can actually go in both, go in that direction. You can actually also go both ways, but back to front. I wanted to show, in case you haven't done turning in a while, that they changed the geometry selection. And this is actually pretty neat. Now you can actually, you're selecting the boundaries on almost like planes, like we do in milling. Really makes it kind of nice. You have all the options in here, so we can kind of like select a boundary area like this. And then down here you can use back cutting now. If you select back cutting, then you will see that this tool path, well, I set the boundary to be, let's go back into the front here. Whoops. Oh, wrong one. 0, and select that it's there, hit OK. That, and I probably have some rapid or some roughing toolpath on. Let's turn those off. You will now see that it will go in a machine the other direction, from the back to the front. So that is, I'm pretty sure it's called prime turning, and I'm pretty sure it's Sandvik who does these inserts. So pretty cool that they incorporated that into this. The other thing that they added in here that is super cool is if you go into your tool library in here and you create a turning insert, you now on the shape, actually if you scroll down to the bottom, I thought you did. No? Dun, 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 dun. Why don't I have a, maybe not. Turn tool, insert, diamond, diamond, triangle. Oh, that's interesting. I thought we had a new custom option. Oh, we do have a custom in here for, yeah, but I thought we had a custom in here too. All right, I gotta look back into that and get back to you. I am not quite sure how that is. I see custom over here. I think we always had this. Turn in general. Yeah, all right. Talking about not doing my homework, eh? I don't see it in there. All right, that is probably, it should be in there. Might be something on my end. That wouldn't surprise me. So I go into a local library. Okay, I gotta do some more homework. Ha! Okay. Moving on. You were supposed to do insert and holders, but I'm probably doing something wrong. Last thing I wanted to show, and I showed this yesterday, but just in case you didn't see this yesterday on the live stream, just in case. We now have, because a lot of people asked for it, in now you can do stick font as text. So if you click on text and you click on the face here, we now have Fusion 360. We now, if you go into the font, we now has Simplex, what is a standard stick font in here. Okay, so that's sketch. Now we have standard stick font that if you ever gonna and the team actually did the engraving feature in here that will do a really nice job with you know, any type of like Windows font, but of course, like a lot of us old timers still like to do like a stick font. I think it's kind of like standard in CNC milling. And you will use the trace function to drive that. So if I select the trace function here, select some kind of tool, maybe to do your countersink here, you can now select that text. You should be able to select the text. You can select that text, and you can now use the trace function for that. So that was found on the 2D trace. Use that one for that. Okay, that was 34 minutes. Really appreciate it. We made it through till Friday. As always, I really appreciate your time. You taking the time to watch these live streams. Absolutely awesome. Again, I apologize for the generative design if you came in late. I was wrong yesterday. Generative design, the little G button that I have on my screen up in the toolbar, you have to have Ultimate, the paying version, to see that. So if you have the Hobbyist Startup, you don't see it. I don't know if it's going to get in there. I'm not 100% sure at some point, but for right now, I have to be Ultimate paying user. That's it. I'm going to end it here. Really appreciate it. Another live stream is in the book. Until the next time, I hope you have an awesome weekend planned. If you like these live streams, thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. Absolutely. I want your honesty. And if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell next to it, and you'll make sure that you get the notifications of the next live stream. That's it. I am planning on being back on Monday, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern. So until then, Have an awesome weekend. Thank you so much.